In order for me to be able to open and execute the files that you create throughout the term, you need to save them in a very specific way. So in this video, I'm going to help you create the folder structure that you'll need and then create and test your first Java program. Do not skip this, even if you already have some programming background. I am assuming at this point that you've installed the JDK, or Java Development Kit, and Visual Studio Code. You might not have done anything with them yet, but you need to have them at least installed. So if you haven't done that yet, stop here, go back to Canvas and find the resources on getting those two things set up. And once you've done that, come back and we'll get started. The first thing we need to create is a course folder. And where you create that doesn't really matter. I'm in the Documents folder on my Windows PC here. But you can save it wherever you want, if you, as long as you are able to find it later, because you'll need to find it in Visual Studio Code, and then you'll need to find those files when you submit to Canvas. One thing I will say is if you put it on a USB drive or something else that's portable, make sure you make regular backups. I always feel bad when students lose their work, but I can't give you credit for it if you don't have the files. And one last note, I'm on a Windows machine, as I said. It's going to be essentially the same in Mac. So I'm going to do mine in the Documents folder. I'm going to create a folder with the name of the course. And right now I am recording this for CIS 150AB. If that's the course name, or whatever the course name is, use that. And I'm now going to go inside that course folder. And for Java specifically, we need a folder here called SRC for source, right? This is where our source code files are going to go. There are exceptions to this. You don't always have to have them in a source file, but this is kind of a convention, and it's the way we're going to do it in this throughout this class. And we're then going to go inside the source folder, and within that we are going to create a folder for Module 1. And here's where things get really picky, because spelling matters, case sensitivity matters. In other words, your upper and lower case, spaces, all that stuff. It has to be exactly the way that mine is set up. So I'm going to type Module 01. I'm using all lowercase letters. There's no spaces in there. That is a 0, not a capital O. Module 01. Okay, as you can probably predict, the next one is going to be Module 02. Okay, at this point, you can go ahead and set up all of the folders for the rest of the term. You can go into Canvas and look and see how many there are. You can make them as you go along as well, but you're doing it now, you might as well get it out of the way. In order to save time on the video, I've kind of pre-created them, so I'll just drop them in here. At this time, there are 8 modules in the class, and there's a final project. You, again, check in Canvas to see how many you'll need. I'm also going to mention that these are for your assignments, but they can also have other things in them. So while I'm working on Module 1, if I'm trying examples in the book or from videos, I can still have those files here. I don't need a separate place for them. But your course files that you're going to submit as assignments definitely need to be in these folders. With those folders and subfolders created, I can now go over into Visual Studio Code, and we can open that folder and create our first Java program. Yours may or may not look exactly like this. Mine has opened to this welcome page. You'll notice on mine, at least, there's a check mark. I can turn that off if I don't like it to open this way. But sometimes you may have other files open already, so it'll look different. Again, we're going to open a folder. There's a link for that or a button for that right there. If you don't see that button, or if you have other stuff open, you can always get it from the File menu. File, Open Folder. I'm going to now navigate to wherever I saved that course file, right here. I'm going to click CIS 150AB, and I'm going to select that folder. Visual Studio Code will now add what's called an Explorer tab over on the left, and here's what we're looking for. At the very top, it says the name of the course. It's probably hard to see on the video, but it's actually in bold because that's the folder that I have opened. Below that is the source folder that we created. And if I expand that, I should see all of the subfolders. You need to stop here and check that yours matches. If there's anything that looks different, file, open, folder, and try it again. If you still, like if you've created the folder structure wrong, then go back in the video and redo those steps to get it set up the way we need it. Mine looks good. So what I want to do now is I want to create my first program and see if this all is working. There is a long-standing tradition in the computer programming community that when you're first learning to write code or when you're learning a new language to write code in, that we always start by creating a program called Hello World. It's just a way of writing a program that says hello to the world, right? It's kind of a silly tradition, but I'm nerdy, and so we're going to stick with that. I'm going to create a file for this Hello World program in my Module 1 folder. Now, again, this probably isn't an assignment that you're going to actually turn in, but I'm kind of working on Module 1 stuff, so I'm going to put it there. I can go File, File menu, New File. I can right-click and say New File. There's also a little icon up at the top here that I can use. Just make sure you have selected the folder first and that it goes kind of inside of that folder. It now wants the name of my file. So this is going to be called, again, very specifically, capital H, hello, no space, capital W, world. You're going to have to get used to this pickiness that Java has, and most programming languages are real picky about things. That's the name of my file. I do need to have an extension on this file, and hopefully you realize from other experiences and other classes that a file extension tells the operating system and tells your applications what kind of file it is. So for Java, conveniently, they are called .java files. And so when I add the .java extension, you can see that code has now recognized that this is a Java file, so it puts a J there. And I can hit enter. It will open hello world.java in a new tab. You can see the tabbed interface up here. You can close the welcome tab if you want. And this is where we're going to create our program. This is where we're going to write our source code. Depending on your configuration and whether you've used this before, you may see some activity happening down in the bottom right corner as VS Code gets things set up. That's fine. Probably you don't know how to write anything in Java. That's why you're taking this course, right? So for now, you're just following the directions step by step as carefully as you can. And you don't need to understand how everything works. You will learn all these things as we go throughout the class. The first line is going to be what we call a package statement. And this really is why all this folder structure matters, because the package name needs to match the folder name. And again, you'll learn what packages are later. But for now, the folder is called Module 01, so the package needs to be called Module 01. As I'm typing, Visual Studio Code is offering some help, so I can just hit Tab if I like the help that it's offering. And again, this is why it's important. On my computer, where I'm going to grade this, I'm going to put your file in a folder called Module 1, so that's why the package name has to match. At the end of a line of code in Java, at the end of a statement at least, I'm going to have a semicolon. Again, we'll learn more about these things as we go. I'll hit enter a couple times, and now I need a class statement. Public class, and now the class name matches the file name. Again, case sensitive, spelling counts, hello world. And at the end of this line of code, I'm going to put a curly brace. Now, the curly braces are different than parentheses. They're different than square brackets. All of these things mean different things in programming languages. The curly braces on your keyboard are probably above the Enter key, and you probably have to hit Shift to get one. When I create an opening curly brace, VS Code realizes that I'm also going to need a closing curly brace. So it's kind of adding one on there for me. And I'm going to hit enter now to give myself some space to work. If I have a typo or a difference between my class name and the file name, if I'm saying Hell World instead of Hello World, I get an error. These two things need to match. Again, Java being picky. So make sure that you don't have any red squiggly lines there. And now we're ready to go down into the class area of this program, and we'll tab over once if we're not already tabbed. If you just hit enter, you're probably already there. And the next thing we need to do is this line of code that you are going to write literally dozens of times in this class. It's really obnoxious. It makes no sense at the beginning, and it actually takes a while into the class before you're into the course, before you're going to realize what all the pieces of this. So for now, this is just copying what I'm going to tell you to type. Public static void main, and now an opening parentheses, as in above the number 9 on your keyboard, string with a capital S, followed by an opening and a closing square bracket, which is just under your curly braces, and then the word args, which is not pirate talk in this case. It is short for arguments. Again, this is so obnoxious and so confusing, and unfortunately it's going to be a while before you understand what lots of these pieces mean, but you're going to type it on every single program you write. So you'll at least get the hang of writing it, and then later you'll understand what it all means. And last but not least, I'm going to add another curly brace there for another chunk of code, another space where I can do some work. All right, I don't like to go too far in my coding before I save things. I can see up on the tab here, there's a little white dot. That indicates to me that this work is not saved. I can go File, Save. Control S on Windows is the shortcut. Save All is, if you're going to learn a keyboard shortcut, learn Save All, because that'll save all of the tabs you have open. And then just so you know, when we go to run this, it will save the tab that you're working in, but it won't save all the other ones that you have open. That's why we say Save All is a good practice. Okay, all this work really is just to set us up and lead us to the point where we actually make this program output something. To do that, we start with capital S system .out .println, which I pronounce printline, println. That is a parentheses now, and then quotation marks. And in the quotation marks, we put whatever output we want. Notice that it has added this little X. We're going to talk about that in a moment, but before I forget, I've got a little squiggle at the end of my line here because I'm not quite done. Java statements, just like up here on line 1, they end with a semicolon. It serves the same purpose as a period when we're writing in our English class, right, at the end of a sentence. And so I need to put that semicolon, and now I've got a complete line of code and with no errors that we can tell. This little X that has been added, this is VS Code's way of trying to be helpful. It's giving you a hint about what Hello World is. At this point, that kind of a hint is just more confusing than helpful. So I'm going to show you how to shut that off. You can always turn it back on later. So to do that, we're going to go into our settings. And this is one of the few differences between VS Code for Windows and VS Code for Mac. In Windows, we're going to go File, Preferences, Settings. On your Mac, you have the File menu, but just left of that, you'll have one called Code, as in the name of the program, Code. And on that one, you'll go Code, Settings, Settings. Okay? But whichever platform you're on, once you open that, it will look the same. You'll get a new tab that looks essentially like this. Visual Studio Code has all kinds of things you can configure. I can't even remember where they all are because there's so many of them, but it has a nice search feature at the top. Now, this little hint that we're trying to get rid of, the fancy name for that is an inlay hint. So I'm going to search for inlay, I-N-L-A-Y, excuse me, because it's laying hints into our code, I guess. So when I search it, I get all of the settings related to inlay hints, and the very first one is just whether we want it enabled. Now, there are a few options. We can have it on or off, or we can have it where we can toggle it while we work. The truth is, it does not matter at all which setting you use. The file that you create and that you turn into me is not any different whether you have this on or off. So you can use it however you want. If you do find it helpful, turn it on. For most of you, I think it's not helpful now, but about 2 or 3 modules into the course, it may become helpful because you'll understand what it is. I'm going to hit off, and this saves automatically, so I can close this tab. And we're back in our source code now. Again, speaking of saving, I want to save this work, so I'll use my keyboard shortcut to save it. And now finally we're ready to run this and see if it actually works. You can see a little shortcut right there. I want you to be aware that the primary way that we run code in VS Code is this button up at the top to execute or to run our program. So I'm going to click that. You'll see some activity in the bottom right, and then you'll see a panel pop up with all kinds of information that is probably pretty confusing looking, and you have to dig into it a little bit to find right down near the bottom my output, hello world. Okay, that shows me that this has worked. If I want to just confirm that, I can go back to my code and maybe I'll add another sentence. Welcome to CIS 150AB. And now notice it's not saved, but if I run it either with that button, or this time I'll use the little convenient button that it adds right there. I'm going to run that. It's going to recompile and spit out a bunch more stuff, and then again here is my output. One last thing to point out, notice that my previous work, my previous output is still there. You can clear that to avoid confusion with these little with this little context menu over here, the little 3 dots menu. You could say clear terminal. You can also use the trash can, which will close the whole window, and then it pops back up the next time you use it. And I wanted to point out that you do have tabs here, and if you ever get lost, like you accidentally click on something, students sometimes can't find their way back because it seems like what you're looking for is output, but we're actually looking for the terminal. All right, at this point, I've set up my course folders, I've created my first Java program and run it. It looks like everything is working. If yours is working as well, you're ready to go. You're all set up for the course. If you've had any trouble, you can obviously go back in the video and try it again, but just reach out to me if you're having trouble that you can't solve.